Just want to bring you a line of breaking news coming into us now, and that is that the Duchess of Sussex has reached out to her estranged father, Thomas Markle, after reports that he had his leg amputated following surgery in the Philippines. This is coming via her spokesperson. So just to reiterate that breaking news, the Duchess of Sussex has reached out to her estranged father, Thomas Markle, after reports he had his leg amputated following surgery in the Philippines. We'll, of course, keep you updated on that story should more information come into us.
Breaking. The Duchess of Sussex has reached out to her estranged father following reports of his leg amputation after surgery in the Philippines, her spokesperson has confirmed. And overnight, the British tabloids, who only yesterday tried to twist the human suffering of a man into yet another anti-Meghan spectacle, now stand exposed, embarrassed, and morally toothless. What happened within just 24 hours was not merely a news update. It was the collapse of a narrative machine. A machine that had long been fueled by distortion, hostility, and an obsession with using one woman, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, as the centerpiece of its endless monetized outrage. For years, tabloids like The Sun, GB News, the Daily Mail, and other sensationalist platforms have weaponized family matters that should have remained private, turning Meghan's personal life into their battleground of clicks, revenue, and cultural warfare. But this time, the façade cracked in real time, and the irony was almost poetic. The same tabloids that mocked her, doubted her, baited her, and used her name to harvest digital profit were forced to watch the truth unfold before their eyes. Truth that rendered their smear campaigns not only ineffective, but shamefully exposed. The truth was simple, human, and profound. Meghan reached out. She acted with compassion. She moved with empathy. She demonstrated dignity in the face of cruelty. And in doing so, she dismantled the entire narrative architecture that had been built against her within the previous 24 hours. For a moment, the British tabloid ecosystem had convinced itself it had won something, that they had finally found a headline to shame Meghan, to call her heartless, to proclaim her disconnected from her family. Their broadcasts were brimming with smugness, with opportunistic talking heads speaking as though they were the appointed judges of Meghan's morality. GB News, in particular, rallied several of their usual anti-Meghan commentators in a sudden frenzy of moral accusation. They wagged fingers. They questioned her compassion. They projected narratives about abandonment, coldness, and indifference. They did what they always do, create a villain out of a woman who had done nothing except live her life with grace, seek peace, and protect her mental well-being and her children. But their performance was brief, astonishingly brief, because within one day, the ground vanished beneath them. When Meghan's spokesperson confirmed that she had, in fact, reached out to her father following reports of his medical emergency, the shift was seismic. Suddenly the tabloids had nothing left. No moral argument, no smear ammunition, no narrative foothold. Their outrage evaporated. Their certainty collapsed. Their orchestrated attack became the punchline to its own joke. They had gone on national television and written headlines premised entirely on speculation, only to be exposed by the very truth they tried to erase. And the silence that followed from those outlets was not the silence of dignity, but the silence of defeat. There was something deeply illuminating in the way this unfolded. It showed exactly how tabloids operate, not with compassion, not with facts, not with concern, but with opportunism. They used a man's medical suffering as breaking news theatre. They used a daughter's private family moment as a profit strategy. They used a sensitive situation as a chance to sling negativity at Meghan without even waiting for clarification. And they expected the public to swallow it. They expected the narrative to stick. They expected the clickbait to transform fiction into fact, simply because they printed it with confidence. But the truth has always had one natural advantage over tabloid storytelling. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need fanfare. It doesn't need dramatic framing. It simply needs to exist. And when the truth emerged, that Meghan reached out in compassion, it immediately destabilized the entire machine that had been built to attack her. The moment her spokesperson confirmed the outreach, the tabloid's moral outrage instantly dissolved into nothing. More importantly, this incident revealed something more enduring about Meghan herself. Regardless of the noise around her, regardless of the constant storms being manufactured by the British press, she remains consistent in her values. She remains guided by empathy. She chooses kindness, even when surrounded by cruelty. She opts for dignity, even when dragged into the mud. She carries a sense of humanity that cannot be erased by headlines, trolls, or televised panels engineered to profit from her pain. Meghan's character, her real character, not the fictional caricature the tabloids push, shone through. It is often said that adversity reveals the true nature of people, and in this moment, it revealed two very different truths, one about Meghan and one about the tabloid industry. Meghan, when confronted with the serious medical emergency of a parent with whom she has had a complicated relationship, responded with compassion. She reached out. She acknowledged the gravity of the moment. She acted as a daughter, not as a public figure, not as a celebrity, not as a headline, but as a human being. Meanwhile, the tabloids responded with opportunism. They saw a medical crisis and exploited it for content. They saw a family situation and turned it into public spectacle. They saw a private moment and weaponized it for profit. And when the truth emerged, they had nothing left but the embarrassment of their own cruelty. The most stunning part is that it wasn't even subtle. Their collapse was visible, undeniable, and immediate. Yesterday, they were mocking Meghan. Today, they were scrambling to explain why their accusations evaporated. Some outlets tried to quietly update articles without acknowledging their earlier venom. Others attempted to pivot the narrative, shifting blame onto anyone but themselves. Others simply fell silent, hoping that the entire spectacle would fade without accountability. But the public noticed. Even those who may not follow royal reporting closely could see the hypocrisy unfold. And for once, the tabloids' pattern of attack and erase became impossible to hide. The moral bankruptcy of their approach was exposed, not just in what they reported, but in how swiftly they pivoted when their narrative collapsed. It revealed the brittleness of the anti-Meghan machine, how desperately it requires misinformation to function, how quickly it collapses when truth steps into the room. There was also a broader lesson, a larger cultural impact worth noting. This incident, though small in the grand timeline of tabloid drama, reflected a deeply troubling dynamic: the willingness of media to manipulate human suffering into entertainment. The tabloids weren't concerned about Thomas Markle's well-being. They weren't reporting out of compassion for his medical emergency. They saw an opportunity to weaponize his pain against Meghan, and they seized it with enthusiasm. And that, more than anything, is what makes their collapse so deserved. Another important element emerged: the public's growing exhaustion with tabloid cruelty. People are tired of seeing Meghan targeted, dragged, framed, or villainized for simply existing. And this moment, where Meghan's kindness exposed the cruelty of her critics, reinforced something the public has increasingly understood. The issue is not Meghan. It has never been Meghan. The issue is a media system addicted to the profits generated by attacking her. This moment also restored clarity around Meghan's humanity, something tabloids have spent years trying to erase. For so long, she has been depicted as a caricature, too ambitious, too independent, too American, too outspoken, too everything. But the reality is simple. She is a woman navigating extremely difficult family circumstances under the microscope of the world, and in a moment of real crisis, she responded, like any decent person would, with humanity. Her decision to reach out was not a public relations move. It was not a strategic calculation. It was not a plea for sympathy. It was a daughter acknowledging a serious medical event in her estranged father's life. And that simple truth carries more moral weight than any manufactured narrative from a tabloid newsroom. In fact, the contrast between Meghan's compassion and the tabloids' opportunism could not be more stark. While she moved quietly and respectfully, the tabloids moved loudly and disrespectfully. While she acted out of concern, they acted out of greed. While she reached out in kindness, they reached for sensationalism. The moral divide was undeniable. But why, one might ask, does this matter so deeply? It matters because for years Meghan has been dehumanized. She has been portrayed as a cold, calculating figure incapable of empathy. This false narrative has been weaponized by commentators, amplified by tabloids, and consumed by those seeking reasons to vilify her. But moments like this pierce through the noise. They reveal the truth. They remind the world that Meghan is not the villain she has been painted to be. She is a person with emotions, compassion, and a moral compass that remains steady even when others lose theirs. And this particular moment, her reaching out, was powerful precisely because she did it despite the ongoing cruelty she faces, despite everything said about her, despite the harassment, despite the distortion, despite the endless cycle of attacks. She still acted with compassion. That is the mark of a profoundly grounded, deeply humane individual. Her outreach did not erase the complicated history. It did not rewrite the past. It did not magically repair years of estrangement or media manipulation. But it did demonstrate her capacity for kindness, something the tabloids have long denied. And in that gesture, she rose far above the noise that has tried to swallow her for so long. Meanwhile, the tabloids, upon realizing the truth, found themselves in an uncomfortable position, forced to confront the consequences of their own haste. Their attempt to shame Meghan backfired spectacularly. Their storytelling crumbled under the weight of reality. And in that collapse, they were forced to face the one thing they despised the most: irrelevance. In the aftermath, the public conversation has shifted dramatically. Instead of discussing Meghan as a supposed villain, people are now discussing the tabloid industry's lack of ethics. Instead of pointing fingers at Meghan, people are pointing fingers at GB News, The Sun, and the entire toxic media ecosystem that thrives on character assassination. Instead of Meghan being the subject of blame, she has become the symbol of grace under fire, again. And in this shift lies the true victory. Not for Meghan's PR, but for truth, for dignity, for humanity. This moment will be remembered not because of the tabloids' outrage, but because of the contrast it exposed, because of the moral clarity it offered, because of the way it revealed the emptiness of the media's narratives and the sincerity of Meghan's heart. For once, the tabloids were forced to sit in their own silence, realizing their cruelty had been exposed. And Meghan, once again, walked forward with grace, reminding the world that compassion is not weakness, that dignity is not naivete, and that kindness, even when extended into painful terrain, is always stronger than manufactured hate. Her gesture of reaching out will echo longer than any headline made to mock her. It is a gesture that proves that character is not defined by what people say about you, but by how you respond to the world, even when the world has not always responded kindly to you. And that is why, today, the British tabloids stand morally toothless, because they tried to shame a woman who responded with empathy. They tried to weaponize family tragedy, only to reveal their own lack of humanity. They tried to diminish Meghan, only to remind the world of her grace. The story did not end the way they planned. It ended the way truth always insists it must, with compassion standing firm and cruelty collapsing under the weight of its own emptiness.
Wow, wow. This sounds very, very interesting and impressive. And for my all peculiar and amazing Sussex family, thank you all for watching, for tuning in Daily Diaries Fridays, and also thank you for working with us along this juncture. It has not been that easy without you people, and we don't take that for granted. We appreciate a lot, and thank you, and have a good time. Keep shining, keep it light, keep it here at Daily Diaries Friday. Bye bye. See you next time. Have a good moment.